Welcome everybody to Tuesday Tea Time. I am out in my meadow here with Cleo, sound asleep behind me, and Azul, also sound asleep behind me. So today, welcome to Tea Time. I wanted to talk a little bit about community. I have to admit that I only have 2 horses here at my house. So I have Cleo and I have Azul. They're my 2 mares. And I don't really think 2 horses is a herd. 2 horses is a pair. And while that is better than having a single horse, 2 horses is not enough to really fill their needs of a herd structure. And this is hard for me. I am a professional horse person. I feel like I know better. But the fact is, I am not at a place in my life right now where I can get another horse. I'm just about to leave for travel to do some teaching in the UK and Belgium and France and Indiana. And there's a lot of travel on the books this year. And with leaving other people to care for my horses, it's not the right time for me to get another horse. But I'm left with this conundrum. I only have 2 horses, Cleo and Azul. Now, the boys are down in the pastures, but because I have a stallion, I can't combine my girls and my boys. They have to live in 2 separate herds, at least unless I want to breed horses, which is not my focus in life. I would much rather rehabilitate them and bring in ones that need homes than breed more. So I wanted to talk a little bit about community, about why it's really good to have a bigger herd if you can. I guess I'm glad that I get to see you in the UK. That's wonderful. So we all do the best we can by our horses, and that's just the first fact. So no matter who you are or where you are, I know that you're doing the very best for your horses, given your situation. And that's great. That's the number one thing. So as a lot of you guys know, I had several horses die this past year, some from old age, some unexpectedly. But my herd shrunk in numbers dramatically this year, and I'm not quite ready to add yet. So I'm left with 2 mares and then the 3 boys, which are down in my pastures in the valley below. So I wanted to talk a little bit about community. I really think that being alive is about riding these waves of stress. Stress is always going up and down and up and down. And our natural inclination, most of us, is to seek comfort, to seek a lowering of stress. Hi, Zena. I'm glad you're here at tea time. So if we're usually seeking a lowering of stress, as Cleo and Zul are exhibiting here, that's wonderful, but there's not a lot of learning that goes on in a lowering of stress. Learning actually goes on when stress goes up, because stress going up motivates us to change, to grow, to become bigger than we were, better than we were, different than we were. But I really think that it takes both parts of the wave, the rising of the stress to cause motivation to learn and grow and change, and that's important. And then the troughs where we come down and we can rest, as Cleo and Azul are showing us so beautifully here. So this idea is that you can't really have one without the other. Everybody talks about stress as a bad thing because most of us feel like the world pushes us too hard. And we're constantly having to battle how hard the world pushes us to grow and change and be different. But on the flip side of that, life can get really boring if it's all about rest, if there's no growth, no change, no development. There has to be a balance in there. Now, I wish that I had a herd of 15 horses, because in that herd of 15 horses, Cleo and Azul and all my other horses could pick and choose the right friends for them, which meant when they needed comfort, they would know which friends to seek out. And when they needed growth and change and development, they would know that maybe that's the same friend or maybe that's a different friend. I wish that I had the ability to have a large herd so that my horses could pick and choose their experiences as was needed to have the best possible life. Because I only have two up here right now, my two mares with Cleo and Azul, they have to be all things to each other. They have to be both the source of stress rising, which encourages them to grow and change and develop, but they also have to be the source of comfort for each other. And it's not that they can't do that. And I think that they do to a certain extent. It's just that it's harder. It's harder if there's only two of them. I think horses are really herd creatures. And herd creatures are designed to have many different individuals to bounce off of. That is what makes them live their best life. Obviously, things like space play into that. You don't want a really big group if you're all crowded too close together. Things like environment play into that. You don't want a really big group if there's not enough food to eat. There's all sorts of factors which are important. But the fact is, we are all riding this wave of stress that goes up and goes down. And if you ride a wave of stress that's going up where you need to grow and learn and change, there's a very common saying in human psychology where if you're comfortable, you're not learning, or if you're comfortable, you're not growing, because growth happens outside the comfort zone. I disagree with that. I think that you can absolutely be comfortable and learning. You're just learning slower. You're learning at a slower rate, which is not as obvious. So if you are curious, if you are engaged, then you are learning. It's still comfortable because the stress has not gotten too high. And hopefully, I think in the ideal situation of learning, you have times of curiosity and engagement, and then you have times of rest where you have sleep and you have recuperation and you have healing. And then you catch the next wave up with curiosity and engagement. If you don't come down often enough, you start to engage in self-defense behaviors. And that's just the way our neurology works. So if our stress is too far up for too long, we will end up using fight, using flight, using freeze. And particularly in the case of humans, you also might use fawn or, some of those other more complex self-protection techniques. And these are not fully socially engaged. What those are is your attempt to survive until you can rest again, until you can come down off that level of stress. And we see this in horses a lot, okay? This horse ran over me, this horse bit me, this horse scared me. Horses use fight to say, back down. It's too much. My stress has been too high for too long. And what we need to learn is to either grow the horse's comfort zone so that they don't feel so overwhelmed by that level of intensity, or, Cleo's going to lie down there. As you can see, she's very worried about being my host for tea time. Clearly not. Azul's a little bit more awake over here. So it's funny. I feel like I should turn the camera away from Cleo while she's flat out. I don't know why that matters to her, but that's my instinct. We'll focus over here on Azul. Flight would be a horse's preference. They would prefer to run away when they need to preserve themselves. But the fact is, we put them in a lot of situations in the domestic world where they cannot run away. And if they can't run away, their options then become freeze or fight. In good horse training, I think that horses really learn to use freeze as the preferable self-defense method because it's the thing that will probably keep a relationship with a human intact. If they need to defend themselves, if they just get real quiet and stop responding, that is a thing that a human is going to generally be able to cope with. If they fight back or run away, that's going to lead to us as the human also feeling like we need self-defense. And then we end up fighting back or running away. So, those are a lot of situations that really just come back to the same thing. Stress is always going up and it's always coming down, and it's going up and down in waves. If you can find the waves, okay, this is my little surfing analogy. You want to catch a wave, you want to ride it, you want to enjoy it, and then you've got to hop off that wave and look for the next one. If you try and hold on to a moment of curiosity, intensity, learning, growing, if you try and hold on to it for too long, you're going to get pulled under. And if you get pulled under, you're going to fight for your life. And this goes for horses too. So in community, if you have a big community of horses, let's say you've got 15 or 20 horses that live together, and that would be a really big community in the wild, because in the wild, there's often not enough food for that kind of density of herd. But let's just say you had a really big herd. What would happen is that horses would learn to switch the conversations or the relationships they were in before they got overwhelmed. So they can spend time with one horse that's going to let them nap. And then when they wake up, they could try and get that same friend to play with them, or they could wander over to another friend and play a game that stretches them and makes them grow and helps them develop as an individual. And then when they're tired of that game, they could make that same horse try and take a break with them, or they could just walk past them and find a different friend that's ready to take a break, that wants a little rest and relaxation and cooperation. When we have a really small herd, as I was saying, I do here with Azul and Cleo, my two mares, all of those roles have to be played by one horse. Or, when I visit, I can play some of those roles as well. But when you have a really small group, the pressure is on for everybody to adapt to everybody's needs. And the fact is, Cleo's need for exercise and Azul's need for exercise are going to be different. They're going to have different time frames. And if they can't agree when the stress is going up, one of them will start biting the other one. Okay. And that's where you see those fight behaviors. Is it fight? Is it play? Well, it kind of depends on what the response is. Okay. These two mares get along pretty well. For the most part, it's pretty playful when their stress needs to go up. Nobody tends to get hurt. I feel pretty lucky. It's not always that easy for a small herd to adapt like that. If you have a bigger herd, they can change friends as necessary throughout the day to try and get their needs met without having to fight for their needs to be met, or without having to run away from someone else who's trying to fight to get their needs met. So, I do find that when you have a community, one horse is going to be on an upswell when another horse is on a downswell. And someone is going to have to stretch and change. Now, that little bit of stress that causes the stretching and the changing so that both can match, this can either be done in a comfortable way where it's curiosity, engagement, and that sort of really fun involvement. Or it can be done in a really kind of frustrating way where you kind of have to fight for the attention you need. And, obviously in the training I do, I really try and focus on how do we normalize curiosity and engagement instead of fight or flight? How do we normalize rest and relaxation and comfort at the right times in ways that everybody can agree to it? And this is an ongoing study for me. I have not solved it, but I love watching the horses all the time. I love learning from them. I'm about to go on tour, and I will learn from all of you guys that I meet along the way. And I just want to say I'm really grateful for the community of people, because all of you that tune into Tea Time, thank you. you all push me to grow and learn and change and develop with your questions. Is that stressful sometimes? Yeah, I don't always know the answers. Do I wish I knew the answers? Yes, I wish that I could answer every question out there and I had the perfect answer for all of you. When I don't know the answer, it is stressful and I can feel overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I have to pay a very cognizant attention to what's the rest I need? What's the recuperation I need so that I can come back to this question with a fresh mind? And that's just my balance that I'm going to keep working on. And I want you guys to keep bringing me questions. Absolutely. I will manage myself. I will manage my need for rest or relaxation in between my moments of stress, which grow and change and develop me. And if I get in a fight with anybody, you'll know that I haven't gotten enough rest lately. But generally, I think that I do a pretty good job of it. I think. Anyway, for those of you guys who are interested, at 1 o'clock today, coming up very shortly, I am holding what I call a freedom-based training learning salon. For all of my Patreon members, you can go to Taming Wild Patreon. And if you want to join us, we're going to have an interactive conversation. And the subject for this particular meeting is going to be separation anxiety. So I thought I would start off my brain ticking away over here, talking about community, so that I can dive into this group session that we're going to have, where people throw me questions about their own situations and their own individual experiences. And I see if I can shed a little bit of light on that so that hopefully together we can keep building a better quality of life for horses and humans together. So I'm going to be doing this about once a month. We'll pick a subject. If we exhaust that subject, we'll move on to something else. But if you guys have any thoughts or ideas, join me on Patreon. I would love to have you be part of the group. We're going to go ahead and kick this first salon off at 1 o'clock today, which is, I think, in about 45 minutes. And I look forward to seeing any of you guys who are there. If you want to join us for the next one, it will be in May after I get back from my next Europe teaching tour. So I hope you guys got something out of my little conversation about community. I'm kind of interested here. Cleo is walking over to Azul, and I think she's going to tell Azul that nap time is over. And the really good thing about this is you can see the harmony and the ease that's between them as Azul stood up. So that's that place where having a friend, having a piece of your community will push you to do things that you wouldn't necessarily choose yourself. And that's where learning and growth and development happen. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but we need our community to push us to grow. Hopefully they do so at good times, in gentle ways, that feels like it's nothing we need to defend ourselves against. Hope that's good food for thought, and I look forward to seeing you guys either next Tuesday at tea time or at the salon in a few minutes where we can chat about separation anxiety.